What if one of wrestling's most iconic events nearly ended in tragedy? WrestleMania is widely considered the greatest wrestling event of all time, a perfect mix of attitude, spectacle, and violence. But in 2001, behind the scenes, one wrestler was in the darkest place of his life. ECW was on its last legs before collapsing in 2001. Tommy Dreamer, the heart and soul of the promotion, had poured everything, his money, his body, even his parents' savings, into keeping it alive. He wasn't just struggling, he was drowning. Paul Heyman, his mentor, had stabbed him in the back. Dreamer was on the verge of the unthinkable, a horrific, irreversible plan that could have changed wrestling forever.
So I'm trending number one with Paul Heyman. Oh, and by the way, his right-hand man wanted to kill him at one point.
How far would you go for revenge? When ECW was in financial trouble, Dreamer drained his personal savings to keep it alive. Dreamer bled for it, literally and financially. The company was drowning in debt, paychecks bouncing, venues pulling out, talent jumping ship. Raven, Taz, the Dudley Boys had long since left the company for greener pastures in WWF. Dreamer shoveled cash he had earned from years of taking chair shots and diving through tables into a dying brand. Paul Heyman knew it. Then came the kicker. WCW offered Dreamer $750,000 a year, more money than Dreamer had ever seen in a payday to secure his family's future. Paul Heyman convinced Tommy to turn down the life-changing payday for the future of ECW. Tommy says during this time frame, when he mentioned the deal WCW had offered, Heyman would guilt-trip him hard, saying if he left, ECW would fold and everyone working for ECW would be out of work, and making it seem like it would be Dreamer's fault. Dreamer gave up everything for ECW only to find out Heyman's loyalty was a lie. That betrayal was just a spark for a bigger backstab. Who was Heyman really working for? By 2000, ECW looked like the scrappy rebel battling the corporate giants WWF and WCW. But here's the dirty truth. Behind the barbed wire and the blood, ECW was a feeder system for Vince McMahon's WWF, and Paul Heyman was in on it. While Dreamer and the roster were busting their bodies for peanuts, Vince was quietly bankrolling ECW, funneling cash to keep it afloat as a talent farm. Wrestlers like Taz, the Dudley Boys, they'd grind in ECW, get polished, then shipped off to WWE for the big leagues. Meanwhile, Heyman wasn't just ECW's mad genius, he was a WWE employee the entire time, pocketing a fat paycheck from Stanford while preaching loyalty to the Philly faithful. Jim Ross later confirmed this. He says, every week Vince cut Heyman a check, all hush-hush. ECW wrestlers, they got the shaft, missed paydays, broken promises, and a boss who'd sold out. Dreamer thought he was saving a dream. Instead, he was propping up a pipeline for Vince, with Heyman playing both sides and laughing all the way to the bank. When Tommy Dreamer realized Heyman was Vince's guy, it wasn't just a slap, it was a shot at his and his family's livelihood, his loyalty, his money, his blood, all for a game he didn't know he was playing. The depression and the humiliation. For Dreamer, it was too much. How far would betrayal drive you? ECW and WCW folded within a couple of months of each other, though ECW's end was obvious way earlier. After their last pay-per-view Guilty as Charged in January, the clock was ticking. ECW's last official show was on January 13th, 2001. But on March 5th, Paul Heyman debuted on WWF Monday Night Raw, doing color commentary beside Jim Ross after Jerry Lawler had quit on February 26th out of solidarity for his then-wife Stacey Carter, who was released due to backstage behavior and creative disagreements. Tommy Dreamer seen Paul Heyman debut on WWF TV with a cushy new gig, and even had Heyman in his ear telling him he would be able to get him signed to the WWF to debut at WrestleMania 17, either as a run-in in the TLC match or a hardcore match. These plans would fall through, leaving Dreamer scrambling for bookings on the indies and doing the last dying days of ECW house shows. The man Tommy had trusted most had ditched him, and that final broken promise was the last straw. Heyman's final insult shattered Dreamer. The depression and the abandonment fueled a daily dark thought process that nearly rewrote his legacy and wrestling forever. What stopped him from pulling the trigger? Leading up to WrestleMania 17, Dreamer was wrestling on an indie show in Houston, Texas. Houston was the location of WrestleMania 17. He spotted a sign that said, "Guns Welcome." That's when it clicked. He planned to buy a ticket to WrestleMania 17, walk into the Astrodome, and kill Paul Heyman on live television. He wanted it to be a statement, one final unforgettable act of defiance. He believed fans might think it was part of the show at first, until the shot rang out. Then he would turn the gun on himself. He was convinced this was the only way to make people understand what he had been through. A simple voicemail saved his and Paul Heyman's life. Jim Ross, then WWE's head of talent relations, left Dreamer a message. "Hey Tommy, it's Jim Ross. Just wanted to let you know we're still thinking about you. We're gonna get it done. Just gotta hang tight." That one simple call snapped Dreamer out of his downward spiral. He later reflected on how stupid and messed up his plan was, realizing he nearly destroyed his career, his legacy, one of the biggest events in wrestling history, along with taking the life of Paul Heyman. 3 months later, in July of 2001, Dreamer finally debuted in WWF as part of the Invasion storyline. But his relationship with Paul Heyman, that never recovered. To this day, Dreamer still doesn't fully trust Heyman. In 2019, spilling this on his House of Hardcore podcast, it cost him talks with the WWE Network for his promotion. Dreamer's sure Heyman pulled strings even nearly 20 years later after this story went viral. To this day, Dreamer still doesn't trust Heyman. The pain of that betrayal never fully faded. For a moment in 2001, it nearly drove him to a point of no return. If you enjoyed that story, check out the time that the Dynamite Kid and Fit Finlay took hazing a little too far. You can check that out right here.